Acting Shadow Minister for Emissions Trading, Ian Macfarlane, will sit down with Climate Change Minister Senator Penny Wong at around 4 o'clock today. It's been a long time coming, and there's still, of course, no guarantee that any agreement will be reached or that the Coalition Party room would eventually sign off on a deal if the two parties actually get together. But it's a start. Ian Macfarlane, welcome to Breakfast.
Morning, Fran.
Ian Macfarlane, these are unashamedly business-friendly amendments. More free permits for trade-exposed industries, free permits for food processors like dairy and meat producers. Coal miners would no longer have to pay for what's called fugitive emissions. How are you going to pay for all this?
Well, if you look at the way the scheme's put together, the reality is that there is plenty of credits in the scheme from 2010 on. In fact, $50 billion worth of credits. So if you look at the money, extra money for generators, then that is covered within that extra pool. If you look at the proposal to lower electricity price increases, that means there is less compensation required to pay back to families facing higher electricity prices.
Okay, so in other words, if your amendment is successful in lowering the impact on the generators so they're not passing on as much to the households, then you'll have less compensation to hand out to the households.
There's two separate parts to this. The generators' balance sheet compensation is one thing, and that's a continuation of the government's proposal for 2 more tranches of 5 years. And then there is the energy intensive part of the scheme, which will lower the increase in electricity prices. Under the Rudd scheme, we're looking at 18% increases in electricity prices to homes and small businesses in the first 2 years of the scheme. We are confident we can flatten that increase out to less than 9%. In fact, the economic modelling says it'll be less than 5%. So there'll be less compensation required. The coal industry will be handled by regulation. They don't get their $750 million in compensation. And as you work your way through the scheme, allowing for the changes in it, it will self-fund, providing it is the scheme that we've put forward.
Within how long?
Immediately. So
it's in the black immediately.
In the black immediately. I mean, there is a huge pool of credits that are floating around in this scheme, and as I say, by changing the way the scheme works and ensuring that that compensation is paid where it's required, but not over that level, then there are at least $2 billion to be clawed back out of household compensation.
As I understand it, one element of that is you're continuing to advocate an intensity-based cap-and-trade approach. This is what we call a part of the frontier model. Now, that's different to the way the government works out permits and compensation. The government's rejected this previously. Why do you think they'll come at this now?
Well, this is different to the frontier model that was presented by Andrew Robb. There are a number of subtle changes to it. The first change is that we've separated balance sheet compensation out of that part of the equation. We've also included Scope 2 compensation in the scheme, which wasn't there previously. It is an intensity cap and trade model, and it does mean that electricity prices will rise slower, but it still keeps the pressure on the generating sector to move out of dirty brown coal and into gas.
How much pressure? Because heavy industries will be allowed to pollute for longer before they have to pay for their own permits, and you're giving some sectors of the trade-exposed industries many more free permits than the government has offered.
Well, we're not giving, again, another difference with Frontier, we're not giving industry 100% free permits.
94.6, isn't it, or something?
94.6 dropping down to 90. That means that every industry in Australia will be paying a carbon price. Every industry in Australia will save that carbon price as they move to more efficient measures.
Yes, but let's be clear here, that's a lot more free permits than the government was offering. Some sectors under the government's plan would only get 60% free permits, wouldn't they?
But in reality, these changes only add about $0.8 billion a year, and as I say, the money is there to fund this.
What do they add to emissions? Because the Green Movement, the first response from the ACF we heard this morning, says your scheme shovels out huge assistance for polluters. That's a quote, a sheltered workshop for industry that will slow our transition to a low-carbon economy. How will these changes help lower greenhouse emissions?
This is where the rubber hits the road and where a few home truths need to be told. An emissions trading scheme doesn't by itself lower emissions. What lowers emissions is the introduction of new technology so that emissions, so you get more energy efficiency and emissions are lower. Under our proposal, the driver is still there for people to put those technologies in place. In fact, the industries now have the money to do it. And I am confident, I am absolutely confident, if you take the coal industry, for instance, the lowering in emissions will be at the same rate as they would be under the government's proposal.
Is there any room for compromise? What are the red lines, the deal breakers for the coalition?
That's a discussion that Penny Wong and I will have, and then the party room and Malcolm Turnbull will have.
Well, one big difference here is you want agriculture exempted from the scheme. Is agriculture a red line?
Well, I'm not going to get into that. I mean, what the discussions between Penny Wong and I will be a discussion about putting in place amendments which save jobs and protect industries in Australia. If the party room, if I can just finish,
Sure.
if the party room doesn't accept those amendments when they come back from the meeting with Minister Wong, then the legislation is dead.
Of course. Do you think the government is a genuine negotiator in this?
From the noises I've heard from them this morning, and I've just had a quick chat to Greg Combe in the hallway, it sounds as though they want a fair dinkum negotiation. I welcome that. I want a fair dinkum negotiation. I'm going there in good faith to get an outcome.
And are you going there with the view that this will be voted on before the end of the year? Because there's now talk about moving a motion to defer a vote on the ETS until next year.
No, look, that is just talk. There is no proposal in my set of amendments to move a motion to defer this vote. Everyone in the party room understands the process. As everyone is obsessed with, there is a small number of dissenters. The fact of the matter is that 85% of the party room yesterday voted to go and negotiate amendments with Penny Wong and reserved their position on how they would vote when those amendments came back.
This small number of dissenters, you've said you got their names in the black book. How many are there?
I'm not telling you.
You're not telling. Well, if there's, say, only a dozen, then I guess you're right. But if there's more, you're not okay. How confident are you that then if you manage to get a deal with the government, bring it back to the party room, they're going to say yes before Copenhagen?
Well, I'm always optimistic, Fran, but the bottom line to that is that the government is going to have to agree to this set of amendments. And if they don't, then obviously there'll be a negotiation. If there is a negotiation, they take the risk that the party room will reject it.
Sure, but there will be a negotiation. No one gets everything. No one gets 100%
Well,
of what
let's
they
see
want.
how we go.
Well, are you thinking you're going to get 100%? Is that what the party room's insisting on?
We had an NRET negotiation where we got 100% plus. And on the renewable energy target, the minister showed an incredible amount of accommodation, and we were very grateful for that, and that's given us the confidence to go into this negotiation.
The power of positive thinking. Ian Macfarlane, thanks very much for joining us.
My pleasure, Fran.
Ian Macfarlane is the Acting Shadow Minister for Emissions Trading.